Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Matt Willson SFL Kickoff Show. I'm Mike Daggs. He's Gerald Smith. Behind the scenes, our production crew, Cameron Irvine and Ron Haynes. We welcome you to Week 10 of Season 24 in the Simulation Football League. Gerald, Week 10 already, double digits.
Yeah, and it's like, you think Week 10 is 12 games in a season? Nope, because we got a lot of, slackers in the league that got to have a bunch of bye weeks, but still, this is, 6 if you count this one, go to Week 15 left, and people are starting to separate themselves from the pack.
And you're already starting out with the math. This early into the show, you're throwing numbers out there. It's hurting my brain. Shout out to all of you in the chat. Saw Christian Bachakalubi, Fox Highwind. I haven't seen him in the chat in a while. Glad to see him. T. DeQueen, Robert Henson. Yeah, he's here, so I guess we're glad to see him. You might be. I don't know. I'm kidding. All right. Glad to see everybody here with us for the Week 10 show. It's going to be a great week of games. Looking forward to it. First, let's recap Week 9. We had only 7 games last week, so we might actually be able to touch on all of them. Week 9 started off with an absolute bang. Baltimore at Arizona was a back and forth game. Looked like Arizona had it in the bag for a while, but Baltimore doing Baltimore things. They just clawed their way back in.
And only took the lead. Their first lead of the game was actually the lead that got them the win. I do believe it was under 2 minutes left.
But I think it was a minute
they
one.
Took the lead, and that was it.
Yeah, that was a great one. Mexico City played DC later on that night. This was the only game that was kind of a blowout of the weekend. It was 26-3 Aztecs. All the rest of the games were either just a 1 or 2 score difference. Sin City at Houston. Houston Headhunters now sitting at 5-3. Played an absolutely phenomenal game, 34-20 over Sin City, who's now at 4-4. It's one of those teams that they started off slow. They kind of got back into the season, but now they're right there at 500 after 8 games. That team's still got a big old question mark for me on what they're going to do.
It's like they got, like you said, start off slow, got real hot real fast, and then now they're starting to cool off.
Yep. Yeah. Atlanta getting back in the win column. They're at 3-4 now. Up until this point, really were kind of looking sluggish. So it was great to see them, get back into the win column, especially on the road. And it was a convincing win too. This one, had blowout potential in this final score, 37-21 over the Chicago Warriors. I think you picked the Bomb Pops this week, and he reminded you that they are not.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like, they were looking so good, and then they just fall apart. And it was at home of all places too, which is. I don't know. I just have no confidence in
Ty Patak, I believe, if I remember right, threw 6 interceptions in that game. But you can't win.
No,
turning it over that many times. It's just too many. Here's one that I got wrong. Lexington at Queen City. I picked against my beloved Buffalo team, and they said, "I'll show you what's up." And they beat Lexington, who had a really big victory the week before, but Queen City at home, 24-17, getting it done.
And look, and they actually show you, like, look, you don't pick us, a contender you chose. We're going to show you that there may not be the contender
they may not be the contender I thought they were. I don't know. We'll see. A team that we both had picked against this past week, Nashville. They visited Pittsburgh, or Louisiana North, as you lovingly call it. And Louisiana North, is that where the horse ran off to? You said the green two-legged horse ran away. Is he just run to Pittsburgh?
He's just hanging out, just looking through the fence, wondering why can't that be me instead of some weird hog with tusks?
Yeah. 20-13, Pittsburgh got the win. Now sitting at 3-5, and then Carolina, visiting Washington. Absolutely phenomenal team, Washington. You look at their past, as Motor City, as St. Louis, and I mean, it's hard to even consider them the same franchise as those, because Washington coming out of the gate swinging 6-1 now on the season, a 23-13 win over Carolina, who's now not in the lead in the North, the East, but they're still close. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on.
And Washington, right? They had that one hiccup against Vancouver where I think they outcoached themselves in that game. They decided, hey, look, let's just go back with what works and keep moving on, and they have.
They have, indeed. So let's get into the Week 10 schedule. We've got 5 teams on a bye this weekend: Arizona, Baltimore, Houston, Mexico City, and Nashville, all enjoying a week off. Buys are all starting to kind of wrap up now. We'll see less and less teams on buys throughout the rest of the season. We won't have any more weeks like we had last week where half the league, it seemed, was on a bye. All the weeks will have about the same amount of games. going forward. So a good slate of games. We've got 4 coming up tonight. You get Saturday and Sunday off from the SFL, but then 6 games on Monday. So something to look forward to there. Starting off tonight, we've got 2 games in this 8 o'clock block. So if you're sick of Gerald and I, that's okay, because we've got Michael Turillo and Brett Solberg in the other block. So I wouldn't blame him for going to listen to a different game.
No, and Turillo is the ultra professional. This is his career calling game.
It
So
is. We're just living in the land of make believe. He actually gets paid.
I mean, he gets paid to have his voice heard. We just hope that people show up.
Yep, absolutely. So we got Albuquerque at Florida starting things off tonight. I think that one's going to be a fantastic game. And Indianapolis at Atlanta also in this 8 o'clock block. In the 10:15 block, we've got Fort Worth at Bossier City. Old South Division battle there. Cameron Duty, Rochelle Colston on the call, and then Oklahoma City visiting Washington, Chris Curtis and Anthony Ellison. That's going to be another really tough game for Oklahoma City going up against the #1 team in the league.
Yeah, they're just so young and so I mean look, and their numbers are so few as far as the contracted players. So give them another season. I do believe they are going to get better, but I just think it's
this isn't the season for it, especially not this week. So then Monday we'll kick things off early afternoon with some matinee games. For those of you who are off on Monday, now you've got something to do in the afternoon. We've got 2-6 Chicago at 5-4 Carolina. Ethan Muslin, Mickey Malillo on the call, and the 2-6 Charleston Predators at Sin City, 4-4. They're looking to kind of get back into that win column after that loss last week. Chad Rowland and Eddie Gage on the call there. So that'll be our early afternoon games, and then some games later on at night. 8 p.m. we've got Lexington at DC. Tyler Falk, Brett Solberg. Primetime crew for a primetime type matchup. We'll break that one down in a little bit more detail. That is the one that we are picking as our game of the week. And at 8:15, we've got Denver at Minnesota with Jacob Clear, DJ Kilgannon. And then at 10 p.m., we've got Vancouver, Los Angeles with Eric Vincent and Alex West. And then, of course, Pittsburgh at Queen City. Ramos Lynn, who will be back from his visit to Los Estados Unidos, and Alden Bleeker on the call there at 10:30. So other than Lexington, D.C., which one sticks out to you the most?
And the only one I think that might have been, and we had talked about it, right? Actually, game of the week potential is the Denver-Minnesota game, because Denver is looking pretty good, right, from past seasons, but Minnesota is also a tough squad at home. Yeah. So that's going to be a really, really good one, I think, because, I mean, look, I think Denver is going to have something to play for, going into that game, because they're actually jockeying for positioning within their own division.
4-3, they're looking to try to win that division. I kind of had Fort Worth, Bossier City circled. Listen, I mean, being a South Division team, I always have to kind of keep an eye on those South Division opponents. And good news is at least one of them's going to lose.
Right.
So, well, I guess only one. You can't have them both lose. I always wish for a tie. There's no ties in the SFL, but I wish for it anyway. So let's get into our game of the week, Lexington at DC. This one looks just really good overall, and it's going to be really hard to pick the winner in this one. It's a North Division battle. The North Division is almost as contentious as the South Division is this season. You've got 4-3 DC sitting at number 2. You've got 4-4 Lexington at number 4. So only that one extra loss drops them down a couple of spots. The winner of this one will be only a game behind Baltimore, who's currently at number 1. The loser risks ending up all the way at the bottom, if not now, very soon. So there's a lot on the line just for a random Week 10 game. Right. Lexington, in my opinion, they need it more. And it's not just because I called them a contender and then they went out and lost, although that might have something to do with it. But, they've already got one more loss than DC. They've played 3 divisional opponents already, and they lost to 2 of them. That's not good for your divisional seeding. For DC, they still have 2 more divisional opponents ahead on top of the one that they're playing this weekend. It also includes Baltimore in Week 14, which, depending on how things shake out, that could actually end up deciding the North Division title. So both teams are very similarly matched. They're both top 10 in points scored, kind of middle of the pack in points allowed. If you look at their various team stat categories, they're almost all the same.
Right.
They have about the same amount where one's ahead of the other. Very similar opponents. Both started off their season with a pair of wins, and people are thinking, oh, look at these 2 teams go. Then they lost, and then both of them won again, and then they both lost again. It's just, I mean, literally, it's like they followed the same plan. And they're both coming off of losses last week. So up and down all the way through the season so far. This week they face off and they'll start to head in separate directions. I think whoever wins this one will stay ahead of the other in the standings for the duration of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Start talking about Lexington and how they'll get it done.
They're looking a little shaky to me over the past 4 games,
Yeah.
right? So 1-3 over the last 4 games. And that's after they started the season 3-1,
Right.
and was looking pretty good, right? And it had me questioning, hey, look, I called them a pretender last season, and they made the playoffs, and here they are making another good run, but then they start to fall off. Look, and the offense has not been at its best in their losses. The quarterback, Kenny Slider, has thrown 9 interceptions with only 2 touchdowns in the 3 recent losses,
Yeah,
and was sacked.
And he was
8
somebody.
times.
Yeah, he was somebody that we highlighted as an offensive player of the week way earlier on in the season. And these last 3 games, it's been like, whoa, what happened to Kenny?
See, and that's the thing. Look, and in their 1 win, Kenny Slider has thrown in the 1 win, over the last 4,
Right.
has thrown 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in that win, and
Kept it
also
clean.
was not sacked. So
Right.
it seems like, hey, when you protect this man, he's able to do good things for you. And the run game has not been great either.
Yeah.
Look, during 2 of their recent losses, they've had no more than 52 yards rushing on the ground in that game. Look, and collectively for the season, they average only 3 yards a carry from their whole running back core. This is 3rd worst in the SFL, and they are ranked 21st in rushing offense, across all teams collectively, right?
Yeah.
Look, they do have top wide receivers with Alex West and Gabriel Money Manning.
Money Manning.
But guess what? I do believe they are having these really, really good seasons. But guess what? I really do think it's because they have not been able to run the ball, so they are forced to throw it.
You can't be one-dimensional in this
Right,
league.
and that's what I'm
can't.
saying. Like, look, but even though they're putting up all these good points, it just, especially as of late, it hasn't even produced them any wins, right? They need to try and balance out the offense a bit so they don't become one-dimensional, as you just mentioned. Look, and we know in this league, we say it time and time again, you cannot win in this league if you become one-dimensional, and it has shown very, as of late for them, going 1-3 over the last 4 games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you got to use that run to set up the pass. And if you're trying to use the pass to set up the run, it's just not going to work. And if you're just forced to pass because the run's not working, that's arguably even worse. The defense, listen, there's a lot of times, obviously I always have to refer back to the Aztecs. That's the team I know the best.
Right.
And there's times that my offensive game plan just struggles. And I'm counting on my defense to bail me out, get me an extra possession, maybe even score, something. Lexington's defense just was really not been that good either, as it was through the first 4 games. The defense, allowing, a touchdown more than the last 4 games. I mean, talk about that.
See, and if you're allowing a touchdown more, that means you're down a touchdown than what you were previously, what you had in the first 4 games. So, like you mentioned, a touchdown more than what they have done previously. That's what they're allowing. Look, they're middle of the road in defense, right? Which includes takeaways, and it has not helped their get their opponents off the field and limit those possessions to give their offense back the ball a little bit more, right? And they do have a really, really good defender, and I love him. The boogeyman, linebacker Tony Roberto has been one of their best defenders again this season, but they just have not forced many turnovers to limit those possessions to give the ball back to their actual offense. So look, and that was part of what they did last year. They were able to force those turnovers and give the offensive ball back because they wasn't a really overpowering defense, right? Look, and even though you considered them a contender, it makes me start to question once I really dove deep into it, of that assessment. But one thing I will say, if there's a team that has a knack for grinding out wins, it's this team, because they've done it last season in a similar position, right? Where I questioned where they were at and what they were doing. I called them a pretender, and they rose above it. So we could be seeing something similar here. They have the ability to rise above it, but will they?
It's an odd trend. I mean, recently in any game that they've been favored, they lose. If they're the underdog, they win. So it's like I'm sure they're hoping that they're the underdog this week, on the road. So maybe they are. I haven't seen the spread yet, but DC, listen, DC's another team. They got a winning record. They're number 2 in their division. They only scored 3 points last week, and their run game also was just shut down.
And I actually picked them to beat the defending champs, right? But guess what?
I told you made a fatal mistake.
Slayed the Dragons, right?
We
and
did
DC
slay the Dragon.
Has a powerful rushing attack with Kevin Say and Sam Harrison, along with the fullback and Chuck Stellar. Together, they have the 4th best rushing attack in the league.
Yep.
And when the offense is at its best, it's when the run game is going really, really well. They
tried to run a lot last week. They did. Right. They tried to run a lot.
And when they struggle, they and when that doesn't work, they tend to struggle. Yeah. And that's what happened last week. You guys shut them down. Only allowed 43 yards rushing on the ground. And guess what? Of course, you already mentioned it. They lost and only scored 3 points. Didn't even put up a touchdown, right? Look, they haven't been as dynamic in the passing game, when the run game isn't working. So they have something to kind of work on there, right? It's just you need the balanced attack. If you don't have a balanced attack, you will struggle, right? And this offense can be dangerous when that run game gets going. It opens up that pass like you mentioned earlier. Yep. And if that's working, hey, look, if they're both executing really, really well, they play really well, right? The receivers do have big play ability. They're getting 15 yards, just north of 15 yards per catch, which is 3rd best in the league. So they do have that big play ability, but it seems like they need that running game to power that passing offense.
Fox Highwind in the chat asking if I'm wearing a girdle. In New York, we call these polo shirts. I'm not sure. He hasn't been here in a while. Maybe he got eye surgery and it failed. I'm not sure what's going on there, Fox. But anyway, let's talk about DC's defense. Statistically, they're very much like Lexington, like I talked about. And, on paper, statistically the same. Eye test wise, their defense sometimes leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like there's so much more that they can do. Sometimes they look great, and all of a sudden they do stuff, but it's just not and they're not doing much in the takeaway department either, right? 4 of their interceptions, this season has come by 1 DB.
Yeah,
and that's their strong safety, Peanut Say, right? And they don't pressure the quarterback particularly well either. So look, and linebacker Nick Fargo has had a great season so far, right, with the team leading 46 tackles and 14 TFLs. But given the talent that they have, and despite, their statistical ranks, they too have a knack for grinding out their wins. But it goes for both these teams. With that type of play, grinding out, is it going to be enough to where some of these teams are starting to rise above and be more consistent and don't have to have these grind them out wins?
Right.
Can they, compete with those teams and actually rise above it? I mean, between these two teams, one of them got to win.
One of them is going to win.
It's just going to be a thing where I have to figure out, hey, look, or can they do it to keep themselves in the playoff hunt?
Yeah, and we will find out, the winner of that game on Monday night this week at 8 p.m. So looking forward to it. We'll see what ends up happening. All right, let's get into the offensive and defensive player spotlights and then the community vote. This week, the offensive player chosen by me. Listen, it came down to a couple of guys, and one of them wasn't even on the ballot. And I'll go and mention him. Baltimore wide receiver Ivory Irvin was almost the choice, but then I looked back at this guy's stats and thought, this has to be the one. And I'll tell you why. Queen City quarterback Michael Brown. That's my offensive player spotlight of the week. Because look at that quarterback rating, Gerald. 158.3. When you get a perfect quarterback rating, you get picked. And that's just all I got to say about that. He only threw 12 passes, but he also was able to use his legs. And I love it when a quarterback is able to get it done a couple of different ways. He was able to get a first down there. 10 of 12 on passing, 83%, just pinpoint accurate. And that's what helped get him the win in this game. I mean, look at this dot right between a triangle of defenders. Just perfect accuracy. And that's why, again, 83% passing on the day. He was also able to get some deep passes in, again, with that sort of accuracy. Good arc on the pass, was able to get it right over some defenders. A beautiful blimp shot. I mean, listen, any play that triggers the blimp just works. And then Lexington, gambling, all-out blitz. Michael Brown able to read the all-out blitz, make the quick decision. He got roughed for his efforts, but it did result in a touchdown. in his pocket awareness too. He just had great pocket awareness and a smooth delivery. Steps up in the pocket, able to get that pass out before the pass rush gets there, and a nice deep completion to get some good yards. And his composure as well. Pressure about to get home, he doesn't even flinch. Watch this. The pressure coming around the outside, almost there. Nope, touchdown. Right in the back of the end zone where only his receiver could get it. And that's what, just watching him play this game and just how accurate he was in his delivery. And then also, like I said, being able to use his legs. He didn't have a ton of rushing yards. In fact, I think he got 16 yards on that rush, and he ended with 14 yards on the day. He had to nail it down a couple of times, and that's what's up. So this guy's got 16 touchdowns now on the season. That leads the league. He's top 5 in completions. He's top 5 in attempts. He's top 5 in yards. He doubled his touchdown total from last season when he was with Pittsburgh. He only had 8. He's already at 16. We're just starting week 10. He hasn't even played that one yet. He led Queen City to a win over his former team, Lexington, who was then Tulsa back in season 22. He was the Tulsa quarterback. This is now his 4th team in 4 seasons. You don't usually see that with a quarterback bouncing around from team to team. I'm kind of thinking maybe he found his home in Western New York. Maybe he's got a thing for the cold. I know I don't, but whatever. We get by. But I think maybe he found his home team here with this Buffalo squad. He's got him up to a 5-4 record from 0-12 last season. Quarterback Michael Brown getting it done on the field.
Look, and sometimes it takes players a change of scenery, right, to find themselves. And guess what? Over 4 seasons, he changed a lot of different places and went a lot of different places, but different coaching, right? A different scheme, right? I think they had a whole ownership overhaul and leadership and everything else, and it's been some success. Look, and he's part of that.
He is indeed. Justin Reside in the chat says, and Mike hasn't picked Queen City all season in the picks, but we're not to the picks just yet. That is not true. I have picked Queen City in the past. I just haven't picked them lately, but I did pick them. You'll have to go back and watch the show. I think it was week 2 or 3. Might have been week 2 and 3. Don't quote me on it. I'm not sure, but I know I picked them. So let's get into your defensive player spotlight. Who do you got this week?
Sorry. So for me, look, I got this guy. Look, and it's not going to be a popular decision at all, but this is like I put everything down to the eye test a lot of times. I try to watch as many games as I can to see what player makes the most impact on a game and everything else. For me, it's Pittsburgh River Hall's defensive end, Brian Coach Craven.
There you go.
Yes, the former Rev right there. Now, look, his stat line will not be impressive to some, right? Look, but I don't care. Like I said, he passed the good old eye test for me last week. And it shows his versatility by playing linebacker here on this first play. He is a former linebacker. A lot of people don't realize it because he's able to drop back into the passing game and bump coverage a tight end and stick with a tight end. It just seems like he's a natural athlete. We're going to see a play right here where he goes back to his more natural position right here as a defensive end. He's just really, really quick off the snap, and guess what? Just attacks it right there. Avoids the block. He beats the block by not getting blocked at all.
Yep.
Big time TFL right there. And what they do? Hey, let's put him a little bit back at linebacker again and see what else he can do. And this was impressive to me, which sold me on it right here. On the other side of the field, he never quits. He runs down as a defensive end. He runs down this running back. Never quit on a play. You got young people watch this game. That's what you do. You never quit on a play because you never know when you can make a touchdown saving tackle. What do? At linebacker, once again, he swim moves the defender. And then he goes in there and he shoulder checks the ball carrier right in there. Look, he swing moves this guy. Get out of my way, tight end. I'm going to show you what I can do.
Doesn't even go down to the ground on the tackle.
So, look, and now he's back at DE. Still how much speed he has right here. Goes around the left tackle, misses him, and then just is unfazed by the running back chip block and is able to get the sack. Right. Wow. So for me, it was a no-brainer right here. It just shows his versatility, how they can move him all across the field. And they did it, and they showed that they can be successful because he's that type of athlete. Look, Craven on the season has 41 tackles, 15 TFLs, and that sack you saw was his only sack this season. Yeah. But they're doing interesting things, with him by moving him around because he used to be a former linebacker turned defensive end. He still has that agility and that ability to do it. He has 7 interceptions all time for him, being a play around. And you saw right there, he was right in the middle of it and almost got one himself. So for me, this is an eye test, and he earned it. And it showed in everything he did. He showed a technique of playing inside and everything else and just swim arming guys and everything else and getting there and making a tackle right at the line of scrimmage from playing linebacker position, showed that he can play defensive end and show he can run guys down the field as well.
Yeah, any player that's a Swiss Army knife like that can be used multiple ways. It's along the same lines, same premise as what I'm talking about with the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks throw the ball. But if you show me a quarterback that can also run when a play breaks down and make something of what otherwise would have been a loss or at minimum just a throwaway, that's what gets extra value there. That's what, really is what a spotlight is all about. It's not necessarily about that stat line. When it comes to all-star voting, to keep things fair and consistent, it is about stats. Different stats are weighted different ways, especially this season. We're changing up how the all-star voting is working, or all-star scoring, I should say. We're like defensive backs now will get even more credit for interceptions compared to just tackles and interceptions being weighed the same. So for all-star scoring, sure, it's stat-based, but just to spotlight a guy, sometimes it's not about the stat line. Dan Tritz is a guy that constantly, every week, I've got to remind him, I don't care if you have a single tackle. That's not the point. What I want you to do is occupy 2 offensive linemen so John Fowler can get through that line and get that TFL.
And guess what?
John Fowler's getting himself some TFLs.
And John Fowler was a spotlight of ours.
He sure was.
Right?
And it was because of guys like Dan Tritz, the unsung heroes that, do extra stuff that might not show on the stat sheet, but they're still helping the team in a great way. And just watching Craven fly all over the field from different positions, it's impressive stuff. So congratulations to Michael Brown and Brian Craven for our picks for our offensive and defensive player spotlight. Now, who won the community vote? The Streets Are Talking community vote put together by Brett Solberg. Week 9 had a total of 69 responses. So shout out Harish Prasad. I think he's got something to do with that because that's happened a few times this season. Anyhow, so the offensive community vote pick was also Queen City quarterback Michael Brown. He got 29% of the vote, 20 of the votes total, and right behind him was Christopher Dean from Washington and Jack Wigmore from Baltimore. He had a great game as well with 18 and 13 votes respectively. And on defense, this is the first time all season that all the candidates had at least 10% of the vote, so it was pretty spread around. But the winner was Chicago's strong safety, Kronk Worthy. He had 29% of the votes, 20 overall. Right behind him, some honorable mentions were Pittsburgh free safety Corey Menner and Mexico City cornerback Merrick Itera. So congratulations to all those guys for being recognized for their performance on the field. And again, to Michael Brown, Brian Craven, and also Kronk Worthy for winning the community vote and our pick for this week. So with that being said, let's get into the game coming up first tonight. So we've got Albuquerque at Florida. This one's sure to be a great one. Albuquerque playing absolutely crazy good football this season. Florida not really looking like Florida that we've seen over the past few seasons. Ron Cochran, he's been out a couple weeks, but they won some games while he was out. He's been back. They haven't won. It's just kind of wild how their season has gone so far. Albuquerque right now in their second season, they went 7-5 in their first season, and they're now a win away from matching that win total in week 10. So still plenty of games to go. Florida, a little different scenario. They're in their 17th season. They've been around a long time. They posted a winning record in every season but 2, and they are a loss away right now from going back down to 500 on the season. Both of these teams currently lead their divisions. Even Florida, who's not doing real great, they do still lead the East, but those leads are very much at risk. For Albuquerque, they're 6-2. They do lead the South. Mexico City hot on their heels. We're at 5-2, and they've got a matchup against Albuquerque in week 14. So that one could end up deciding the South. A loss would put them behind the Aztecs in the standing immediately. Behind them is 3 teams with only 3 losses each. So number 1 team's got 2 losses. All the rest have either 2 or only 3 losses in the South. The whole thing could flip again. For Florida, 4-3 does lead the East right now. 4-4 absolutely will not. Carolina, who beat them a few weeks back, is right behind them at 5-4. With that extra win and the head-to-head, a loss puts Carolina back out in front. So whoever loses tonight is going to lose that lead, at some point, if not immediately. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Let's talk about Albuquerque and what they're going to be looking at.
And Albuquerque, as we know, right, is like a team that just has never lost at home yet. They aren't playing at home tonight, but they have been playing extremely well this season. Look, they had dominated opponents by outscoring them 53-6 over the last 2 games. Wide receiver Cade Merring is playing phenomenal and is
number one
in receptions, number 1 in receiving yards. Look, 61 receptions, over 1,100
Yeah.
yards
Those
receiving.
are good season stats.
Dude, it's insane.
We're in
Like, I
week
wish I
10.
would have ever gotten a wide receiver that could do that. And just all the teams I have, for me, it was impossible.
Right.
Right. Look, and not to mention running back Jason Williams, who is top 5 in rush yards and #1 in rushing
He finds that end
touchdowns,
zone. Yep.
and averages just over 4 yards a carry. And now look, and this is the thing, and that's just the offense, right?
Yeah,
and
their offense is on fire.
See, look, and defensively, right? In terms of team rank, like, they are not really impressive. They, but they are an extremely good defense.
Yep.
They rank among the league's best in sacks. 16 sacks, 5th best in the league, and interceptions. 16 interceptions, which is also 5th in the league.
Yeah.
Defensive end Chris Porter leads the league with 9 sacks, and it's from a defensive end position. In recent memory, we've had linebackers blitzing off the side, kind of leading that charge. It's like we're turning back the clock, right?
Yeah.
These defensive linemen and Chris Porter's playing at a high level. 9 sacks, and all DBs on this team have at least 2 interceptions, and there's 5 of them in total.
Right.
They all have 2 or more interceptions on the back end. Look, they are a top-tier team, but look, I do think their only flaw is playing on the road, which they are tonight. They are 1-2, but I do think how strong they are, it's going to get better for them, and they have shown it over the course of the season so far.
It may get better. The one thing I'm concerned about for Albuquerque, and being a South Division opponent, I'm only so concerned, but the concern I have for them, you mentioned, K. Marion, and you mentioned Jason Williams. Those are the top 2 players on offense.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at their other players on offense, statistically, really none of them are there.
No, it's not. It's middle of the road at best.
So who do you got to shut down then? K. Marion and Justin Williams. I'm not saying or Jason Williams. It's not saying it's easy, but is their offense too one-dimensional? I mean, they're getting it done on the ground. They're getting it done in the air, but it's kind of like Lexington last season. We kept on talking about that. You take Gabriel Manning out of the equation, they're not going to win that game. If somebody can figure out how to take K. Marion out of the equation, can Jason Williams carry him on the ground, or is it not going to be enough to get it done? Can they shut down both? I don't know.
So far,
no.
Yeah. Like so far, I don't think they have any sense of urgency that, hey, look, with that we have a problem. So they're just going to keep it going. And their only struggles have been on the road. Why? Because they just always struggled on the road. I think they only have 2 total wins.
Phenomenal
on the
home.
road.
Can't
And
win it on the road.
So it's important for them to keep winning these games now on the road, because guess what? If they get in the playoffs, because they are so dominant at home,
they need that home field advantage.
They're going to need that, right?
Yeah.
Unless they prove otherwise. So, and it's going to be for them. Look, and if they get shut down one or the other here, from K. Marion or Williams, how are they going to react to it?
We'll see. Yeah, and the that big Week 14 matchup with Mexico City is in Mexico City, so I'm sure that's one that they have circled on their calendar, prepping for already. Florida, like we talked about, it's not the same Florida team that we've come to know over the last few seasons, and it's just kind of weird to say that because they are still leading the East Division. So talk about them.
It's kind of like Florida's been like, I know by their standards and what we've all used to in the past, they've been kind of terrible. Let's just be honest. And somehow they're still leading the East Division because Carolina can't get out of their own way,
right?
In a weird way, because they not only when Florida lost 2 games, Carolina does the same thing, and they put themselves in second place.
They're like, we want to be in the lead, but only a little.
Oh, we like a challenge. We like Gerald to talk smack about us or something. So it's just weird. So Florida is losers of 2 straight and have been outscored 71-24 over the last 2 games. And this is after
shutting out a team.
After shutting out Nashville.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. It's not saying a whole lot, so let's just move on for that. I done beat that dead horse so many times, it's not fun anymore. So, look, with or without their Hall of Fame quarterback, Ron Cochran, they just haven't looked very good offensively, especially in the run game, which has been very bad. And they only average 40 yards a game rushing, which is not, and they're being one-dimensional. And as we've said, and we're going to beat this dead horse too, you cannot win if you become one-dimensional like that. It's just not a recipe for success. So I don't know what's going on offensively for them. It just is not what we're used to seeing. And it's like, I mean, are they aging and just running out of ideas? I don't know. I can't pinpoint it right now, especially on offense.
Yeah, or defense, quite frankly. I mean, the defense has just struggled even against mid-tier teams. And statistically, it shows on paper. They are in the bottom third of the league in every single defensive category, which is just mind-boggling because that secondary is one that's always been great. And that defensive line is one that's been feared for over 10 seasons. I mean, they've always been good.
Look, and we're going to point to the loss, right, to Big Sexy, right?
Yeah.
Alex Dominguez, he's been gone for a couple of seasons now, but it's showing. And they were one of the defenses I said that plays the run from a defensive back standpoint better than anyone. They played line of scrimmage good. We haven't seen that this season at all. They are 5th worst in the league as well in takeaways, which, look, I think it's affecting their results on defense as well, right? Look, I just cannot pinpoint exactly what the core problem is defensively. And to be honest, I don't think they can either because it's just the way that they're looking. They have the talent that they've had for a long time, but like I said, but can it be aging players and or an aging scheme that is their problem? That's everybody figuring out. I mean, only time will tell them. I mean, we're going to start to see it tonight.
We will start to see it tonight. It's going to be interesting to see. You get a team that struggles on the road against a team that just struggles, period, this season. But one that, every once in a while, listen, even when Florida's struggling, all of a sudden, Coach Mighty there just dusts off, I don't know, maybe an old playbook or something, throws something out there, gives his team an inspirational speech. I don't know what he does, but all of a sudden they just come out and play like seasons past.
Could he be sandbagging? is that what he's doing? Right?
I don't know, but I'm looking forward to this one, and it's going to get started in just about 10 minutes time. So we'll see what plays out on the field. We'll know for sure in the next couple of hours. One of these teams is going to, like I said, one of these teams is going to hold on to that number 1 spot in their division. The other one, quite likely, will fall out of that first place spot. So be interesting to see what happens. But first, let's get into our picks. And that's right, I'm smiling. Why am I smiling? Because I'm back in the lead, baby. 52-33 is my record right now. You are 51-34. I regained some ground. Not a lot of ground, but a little bit. I went 5-1 last week. You were 4-2. I thought by doing it this way this season, by picking every game except for the one that we're calling, I thought for sure, like by this way through the season, one of us was going to be way in the front and the other one was going to be way down below. I didn't know who it was. I'm not saying I'm going to pick them all right, but I thought it was going to be like with all the different games. I thought there would be some separation. We're off by one.
After I had that terrible week, I think I won one game. Yep. I'm like, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So, but the very next week I flipped it. I was able to go I was hoping to go undefeated that week. I ended up going 8-2 out of the 10 games we picked, and it got me right back.
I think I won 4.
And I think we either tied or actually I got in the lead, but. It's been really
close.
fun.
It's been a lot of fun. So let's get into the picks for this week and see who we're going to go with. So let's start off with the game that's in our time block, but 15 minutes later, Indianapolis at Atlanta.
Like I picked against this team last week because I just did not have any confidence in what they were doing, and I believed in the not bomb pops to actually go and actually win this game
at home.
But Atlanta actually went into the Chicago Stadium and won that, and I have to pick Atlanta here because I just can't trust. I tried to trust Indianapolis for a long time. I rode that bandwagon, and to my dismay, I was the only one left, and which pains me now. So I just can't trust that franchise right now. I have to pick Atlanta. The old Louisiana foe, they still came. We still own Atlanta, and as the Revs. But I'm picking Atlanta this week to beat Indy.
Only good bug is a dead bug.
That's
I
right.
saw it on the T-shirt. I'm also going to go with Atlanta this week. They're at home. They're against a team that I think is pretty evenly matched with them, but I think Atlanta is going to get it done. Playing there at the Hive. Fort Worth at Bossier City. Who do you got?
And it's the thing. I almost went the opposite way on this, and I'm trying to find a replacement for us in Louisiana, but it's just not quite there. I can't buy into it. They started out really hot, and then they cooled off.
They ran out of steam or something.
Yeah, they just, I don't know, maybe they just stopped chucking coal in there or something. I have no idea what they're powering the steamer with, but I do believe they are a better team at home. But I think Fort Worth is a better road team than what Bossier City is a home team. So I do think that Fort Worth goes into Bossier City. It's going to be a close one, but I do think they best Bossier City. Fort Worth wins.
I was just in Fort Worth. I met with, head coach, owner, Luis Gonzalez. I went to the stockyards, the actual stockyards. Not impressed. Buc-ee's, overrated. I said what I said. Listen, Fort Worth's still going to get the win in this one as much as I want to constantly vote against Fort Worth. Love you, Louise. I want you to always lose. Fort Worth, I think, is going to get the win. Oklahoma City at Washington. This one, I think we can just say
yeah,
it's
I don't
Washington.
think we can just breeze over it.
Washington.
It's Washington. Let's move on.
They're playing lights out football. Oklahoma City is not. Chicago at Carolina. Washington for both of us in that.
Yeah,
one.
and I got here for Carolina, Chicago. Chicago let me down last week. Carolina's on a 2-game skid right now, right? So Chicago seemed like they were getting back. If they'd have beat Atlanta, I would have probably picked them in this game. But Carolina is a better team at home as well. And they're playing back at home, and they have to. What better way to turn your season back around and maybe try to, pending a loss, tonight by Florida, Carolina might be able to get themselves right back in it and actually win this game. So I'm picking Carolina to win this one. And if they let me down, you guys are in trouble. We're gonna have words. Find me in the DMs if you lose. I'll tell you.
Yeah, Chicago. I love to pick Chicago. I love type attack. They're in Carolina. Listen, I love the guys in Carolina too. The Prasads, the Curtises. It's all great people in both of these organizations, quite frankly. I think Carolina's going to get the win, though. They're at home. They're so up and down, but I think this is one of those weeks that they will be up. Christian Bonchgalubi in the chat says, boo, boo these men. Listen, please, I beg you, prove me wrong. Please prove me wrong. I would love nothing more than to be proved wrong. Nothing against Thump and his squad out there in Washington, but I would love to see an underdog like Oklahoma City win that game. Please prove me wrong. Charleston at Sin City.
And this was a difficult one too, because like I said, I am starting to buy into, hey, Charleston's record isn't really indicative of how decently put together a team that they are. Sin City is on a skid right now.
Yeah.
Right? But again, they're a home team. They play better at home. And I just think when they've had these skids and they kind of fall off a little bit, Sin City has a weird way this season of bouncing right back in a very, very big way, in a dominant way. I think they win dominantly at home against this Charleston squad.
T-Pat lurking in the chat. He says, I'm just going to say it. Bucky's slander is the ultimate bad luck. I would never dare do such a thing.
I got to agree with him. You are wrong. I love me some Bucky's.
Bucky's is overrated.
I
said what I said.
I love Bucky's. I can camp out.
It's overrated. I went in the store.
It is a store.
You can pick any one of 500 gas pumps to get gas at and then go inside and buy a T-shirt. It makes no sense.
I don't buy the T-shirts. I just buy some beaver nugs and get me some brisket. And then
overrated.
And then I get me some of them candy pecans. And you got to get them hot though. It's real good. I get like 3 of them, and then I jump in the car and go.
We're off track.
All right, let's go.
Sin City. I'm going to pick Sin City as well in this one. Charleston, I've picked them a few times this season. I think that they're better than the record shows. But on the road against a team that's coming off a loss, Sin City, I think, is going to get the win. I'm just slandering all things Fort Worth because I have to. Listen, Bucky's, it's fine. It's a store. I don't know. And the Stockyards was actually quite cool. But I won't actually, admit to that. Although I guess I just did. Lexington at DC. Their game of the week. Who do you got?
So, and the contenders of Lexington and, the Dragons, I got slayed massively last week by you guys. I have to go with DC. I just don't see them losing 2 home games in a row to what I consider a struggling Lexington team right now, because they're going to, I think DC, right? I think they're well coached, and they're going to go in and they're going to realize, hey, look, this is what we did wrong against Mexico City. We can't do that. Yeah. And guess what? Lexington is going to run into somewhat of a buzzsaw, and I don't think they're going to come out with the win. DC takes it.
We've agreed on every pick so far, and this one, still going to agree. I got to. Listen, Lexington's making me question me calling them a contender even just last week. They went out and lost last week, and this week they're on the road in D.C. against an angry Dragon team. DC, I think, is going to get the win. Denver at Minnesota.
So I have to go with Minnesota. I like some of the things Denver has done. I just don't think they're there yet. They're starting to put some things together, but against a quality team like Minnesota, who has been, the second and third seed in the last couple of playoffs and playing dominant ball, and the former MVP is on this squad as well.
Yep.
I think Minnesota handles them pretty good. I think they win by 10 points to 2 scores.
We're not going
10 points is 2 scores, but I think they just win it.
We're not going to see a lot of changing in our standings this week, I think. I'm also going to go with Minnesota. They're a powerhouse team on the road. It's nice to actually agree with you on things for once. Usually I'm like, nope, you're wrong. And, we end up going 50-50 anyway. But, yeah, I think Minnesota's going to get the win in this one. Vancouver at Los Angeles.
I made the mistake to pick against Vancouver one time, and they made me pay for it. And shame on you, Washington, by the way. Shame on you. It's your fault. That's your fault is the reason why I'm behind Mike by 1 game. So, but I have to pick Vancouver here. LA just doesn't have it put together. They have tons of talent. They just can't put it together. They need some sort of a scheme or structure change, coaching change or something there. Vancouver is very well coached, and they go into LA and win.
And again, I'm going to continue to agree. Vancouver on the road in Los Angeles. Vancouver's been putting up way too many points this season to lose in LA. I think Vancouver gets the win. Last but not least, Pittsburgh at Queen City. Who
I
you got?
am going to keep this short and just say 2 words: Louisiana North.
And that will be your demise. Our first pick that we are going to disagree on. Let's go Buffalo. Justin Reside. I'm picking Queen City. Don't let me down or I'll never pick you again. That's all I got to say about that. So I'm kidding. I'd still pick them anyway. I love the Corsairs. So that's it. That's all the time we've got. We've got only about a minute until kickoff. We've got Florida hosting Albuquerque. It's going to be a great game. You got a few games to choose from tonight. They should all be great. But first up, Florida will host the Adams, and we'll see what happens. So as Matt Willson would say, there's only one way to find out, and that's on the field. So we'll see you down there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida to get this one started. Don't go anywhere.